James Brown, he is the current host of the NFL Today and CBS and Inside the NFL on Paramount Plus. We're lucky to have him today. He's a special correspondent for CBS News, contributing across all of the network's news platforms. He is a three-time Emmy Award-winning network broadcaster. JB, as I like to call him, has hosted the Super Bowl a record-breaking 10 times. Back in 2009, JB became an ordained minister and released his first co-authored book entitled Role of a Lifetime, Reflections of Faith, Family, and Significant Living. JB's ministry engagements have enabled him to preach at numerous churches all across the country, speak at men's conferences, and appear on many Christian network TV shows. James, thank you so much for being here and sharing your story with all of us today. JB.
Meredith, thank you so very much, and indeed it is a pleasure to be here, and I thank you so very much for welcoming me to be a part of this annual luncheon of the Salvation Army. It is very personal to me, and I'm thrilled to be here. But before I get started, let me just say that it is a thrill to see Ms. Jean Jones and Charlotte Jones here, because many years ago, when I was working at Fox, I remember Mrs. Jones, the mother, the wife of Jerry, had asked me to play a part in pulling a joke on Jerry regarding his birthday. I really wasn't too comfortable doing that. However, if the wife asks you to do anything, you do it. And there's a biblically sound reason for that. When I first broke into the ministry, one chapter of Psalms really caught my eye, and it was Proverbs 21:9 and 21:19. And check this out, it caught my attention because the subtitle says, Instructions for Life. Two of those scriptures had to do with the wife. 21:9, as many of you know, says, it is better to be on the corner of a rooftop than to be in a house, a wide house with a brawling woman. 21:19 says it's better to be in the wilderness than to be in a house with a contentious and angry woman. The contemporary translation of that, guys, means what? If mama ain't happy, nobody's happy. Now, I'm not saying that's what Ms. Jean Jones was, but when she asked me to do it, believe me, I was going to follow her because my mother, God bless her, my mother, every bit of 5'5" and about 135 pounds, she carried a big stick, and we called her the sergeant, not to her face, but we called her the sergeant. And my mother was no nonsense, so when I was asked to do that, I did that, and I hope and pray that Jerry doesn't hold it against me. Secondly, Lieutenant Colonel Art and his wife Annie said that they were just with Terry Bradshaw not too long ago, my colleague when I was at Fox for about 10 years. And one of the reasons I carry with me now lip balm on my person all the time is because of Terry Bradshaw. Terry Bradshaw is the biggest crack up in all of television. And this was one of the reasons why I carried this story here. Day one before our broadcast, everyone's wondering, Fox is going to be televising football. It had never done football before. The studio host is going to be co-host with James Brown and Terry Bradshaw. So Terry, considering himself to be the studio veteran, wanted to make sure that we were all comfortable before we went on air. Howie Long was with us 13 times a Pro Bowler, 8 times successful in the league. Howie was a rookie, so Terry said with 2 minutes before the air, he said, Howie, take just a little bit of and it was actually Carmex in the soft container, the lip balm. He says, Howie, take just a little bit of this and put it on your finger, rub your lip, and you won't get cotton mouth. 1 minute to air, he turns to Jimmy Johnson, who had sadly just left the Cowboys, and he says, Jimmy, look here, I know that you're a studio veteran, but take just a little bit of this Carmex and put it on your finger, put it on your lips, and you won't get cotton mouth. You see where I'm going with this. 30 seconds before air, Terry takes it and he puts a little bit on his finger, he puts it on his lips, and he puts it back in his pocket. He did not offer me any. Now, my sister, who's an HR expert, said, JB, I know that Terry calls himself the redneck. You can't call him the redneck. So I said, lovable redneck, why didn't you give me any of this? He pulls it out and he looks at my lips and he looks back at this and said, "You're going to need a whole handful of this." Wasn't funny at the time, but they came on the air laughing at me, so that's what I think. But Terry and I became good friends because about 12 years ago, he invited me to come and speak at his church. So I know Terry is certainly a born-again Christian. Keep him in prayer because he gets pulled in so many different directions, but he is an awesome, awesome talent. Now, finally, I'll say this before speaking to the message here. I was extremely excited about coming to speak at this annual luncheon because of Majors Paul and Dawn McFarland, who have played a very important role in my family's life. So excited that as I was coming into the ballroom here, I heard a couple of people talking excitedly. "Man, I can't wait to hear James Brown speak." One of the people said, "Well, why would you be so excited to hear him speak?" He said, "Because Major Paul and Dawn, they absolutely performed a miracle of all miracles. They went and rose up from the dead James Brown, the godfather of soul, to be here." I've had to deal with that all my life. No, I am Mary Ann Brown and John Brown's son, had nothing to do with singing. Your boy couldn't sing or dance. All I can tell you is that I love the Lord, and I certainly enjoy preaching the gospel of Jesus Christ. That is what I'm about. So part of the reason I was so excited after I looked through all of the material about the Salvation Army, we all know its historical starts, 1865 over in England. Minister William Booth and his wife Catherine started it for salvation purposes, to bring salvation to those who were destitute, poor, and hungry by preaching the message of Jesus Christ. It is so frustrating to me, quite frankly, being in the media, and Miss Meredith and I were talking about this, where people are so hesitant to speak the name of Jesus Christ, ashamed or afraid to talk about the gospel of Jesus Christ, when it is that which leads to salvation, which is why that which started in 1865 over in England is now in 130 plus countries and doing the job that no other has been doing. And certainly, even as Ms. Meredith said, that you do things big in Texas, here in North Texas, a complex that covers some 4,000 square miles. And you heard the numbers, the food shelters, the recovery programs, and of course the food pantries, doing that kind of work. Well, let me just speak from a personal standpoint. The reason I'm so excited about it, and I pray because in my church I'm known as the weeping minister, and this is personal, that which Majors Paul and Dawn McFarland did for my family, I am eternally grateful. There were 5 of us. We're down to 3 now. 2 of my brothers who were battling the drug demons for years went to the Salvation Army Rehab Center in suburban Maryland previously, before Majors Paul and Dawn were transferred to Tampa and, of course, here in Dallas. And they were awesome in what they did in helping my brothers to come to a saving knowledge of Jesus Christ. Major Paul held my brothers accountable. He was no nonsense, but he displayed the love of Jesus Christ and taught them the word and who they are in Christ Jesus. Little was I aware that within about 5 years after that, my brother John, in a halfway home, on the road to wholeness, would die in that halfway house, getting out of his bed to go to his CPAP machine, and found 2 days later in the halfway home, dead. Yes, it grieved me in the natural. It hurt tremendously. My youngest brother, Everett, had been drug addicted for 38 years, went to multiple drug treatment programs. Many of them were not with the Salvation Army, but when he ran into Majors Paul and Dawn McFarland, and they held him accountable, he was on the road. It is a tough and vicious addiction, to say the least. And my brother, when he had to go for the 8th treatment here in Dallas, going to Dr. Tony Evans's church, who played a significant role with Majors Paul and Dawn, sent him to a place where he finally surrendered to Jesus Christ and said he wanted to come back to Dallas to give his testimony before his leg was to be amputated, and the doctors were treating him with no less and for no less than about 5 or 6 morbidities. He went home to be with the Lord about 12 months ago. But that which is most assuring to me is that they, while I grieve in the natural, we know according to 1 Thessalonians 4:13, we don't grieve as the world grieves, which has no hope. I know where my brothers are, and that gives me eternal comfort. So I am beholden to the Salvation Army. Yes, it's a large organization. Yes, it is brick and mortar. But more importantly, it is the people, the committed folks there who have one focus, and that is to engage in God-empowered transformations for individuals and society, and they do it all year long. That which I read in some of the bullet points that really touched my heart, that will lead me to the last part of my message, was saying that nothing that the Salvation Army does could be done without its team of volunteers, the leadership, the donors, and the corporate partners. That struck me because coming down to Dallas to talk, where football is a second religion, even though I must be honest with you, I'm not that way now. Back up in Washington, whenever I went to a church and there were a lot of Cowboy supporters, I asked the pastor, could I please conduct a healing ceremony? But because of my relationships with the Jones family, I don't do that anymore. I think it was done in reverse. They viewed a lot of the Redskins or former Redskins commanders because they are struggling big time right now. But anyway, we won't talk about that. Let me just say that my message, if you will, it's a truncated sermon with an athletic title, but biblically sound, entitled, for those of you who aren't on board in a significant way for what the Salvation Army does. It is to break the huddle and run the play. Break the huddle and run the play. You've already heard what the matching donation is going to be. Let's break the huddle and run the play. As a matter of fact, I consider this ballroom here another version of the huddles that we see in football. We all understand that in football, they have huddles that on TV I call little prayer meetings, little worship groups, when the players get together in a huddle and they discuss the play that's been sent in for the purpose of advancing the ball down the field to go over the goal line to score the touchdown. It is the same in the game of life. Let us break the huddle. And let me just give you 4 reasons why we have to break the huddle. Even though many of you biblical scholars will know that Martin Luther, the great 16th century reformer, he felt that the book of James, chapter 2, verses 14 through 26, which talks about faith without works being dead, and I've tweaked it to say, break the huddle and run the play. It is about action, action, action. Martin Luther thought that James was focusing on works, where he focused on faith. And we all understand that it is grace through faith that saves us. So there's no contradiction between faith, which the Salvation Army models, and action or works, because it's not faith or works, it is a faith that works. And that is exactly what the Salvation Army has been doing, modeling a faith that works. So what I would encourage you to do is to understand that there are 4 at least reasons why we all need to break the huddle and run the play to ensure that in the game of life, we are scoring touchdowns for those who are in need that we've seen video presentations about. Number 1, the reason we need to break the huddle is because no progress is made in the huddle. I've gone to churches where there have been people who've gotten a play that they know is from God himself, and they sit around and they discuss the play. They dissect the play. They theorize about the play, but they don't break the huddle. And they've been in a huddle for 10, 15, 20 years, but haven't gotten in formation to run the play. You can't score a touchdown. You can't kick a field goal. You can't throw a pass in the huddle. We must break the huddle and run the play. The second reason why it's important to break the huddle and run the play is because we are all, just like in football, there are 4 quarters in the game of pro football. There are 4 quarters in the game of life. We are all on the clock. In pro football, now this is the part where I need your input because you are a savvy football audience. In the pros, how long are you given to run a play? Come on, Dallas, how long? 25 seconds. Thank you. Come on now. 25 seconds to run the play. And if you don't run that play in the 25 seconds that you're allotted, what happens? Delay of game. That means heaven is throwing some penalty flags on you at your feet if you are delaying running it, because we're all on the clock. Now, I understand that the average lifespan, if you factor in all of the racial groups and some of the morbidities that are associated with groups, it might be more like 78, 79 years of age. But to make it easy for me with my math, let's just say it's 72 years of age. And we know in Psalm 90, when they talked about 70 and 80 years of life, that was for the disobedient group out there in the wilderness. Genesis 6 says 120 years. But let's just do it to make the point. 72 years of age is the average lifespan. So that means by the time you turn 18, you're at the end of first quarter, 18. So that's why for you young people, we want you to learn the rules where your help is best utilized so that you can play the game effectively, not only in the game of life, but to help others score the touchdown as well. That means by the time you're 36, you're at halftime. I've got shoes older than 36 years of age. 54, you're at the end of the third quarter. That means by the time 72, what does that mean? Game's over. End of regulation. No, I hear you said I'm older than 72. No, I got that covered too. Because in the game of football, and I don't care that they've changed the rules in pro football, trying to give each team an opportunity to score. That doesn't happen in the game of life. In the game of life, overtime ends how? Sudden death. That is exactly right. So, thank you, sir. So we don't have time because we're all on the clock. The third of the 4 reasons why it's important to break the huddle and run the play is because of where the play comes from. Now, many people who don't follow football would think that the players are calling the play. Overwhelmingly, it's an offensive coordinator. In stadiums, where are most of the offensive coordinators situated? They're sitting up in the booth. Why they're up top in the booth? They can see the whole field in terms of what the defense is doing, so they can send in a play designed to maximize against the weakness of the defense. Well, for those of us who are Christians, our play comes from someone who the old folks used to say sits high and looks low. Our play comes in from God himself, and he sees the end from the beginning. Who better to take the play from and go and execute it than God? Psalm 32:8 says, I love this one, where God says, I will instruct you and teach you, the King James Version, of where you to go. I will guide you with my own eye, because he sees the end from the beginning. So we get our play directly from God, and he will give us a customized, specialized play. You'll hear him talking to you about what you ought to be doing to break the huddle and get out there and run the play on behalf of the Salvation Army. The equivalent in a bigger sense, of course, is the game of life. And finally, the 4th point in this truncated message will be, if you run the play, we run the play that God gives us, God himself will come down and block for us. I know that many of you have probably taught football and know it far better than me. let me share with you, because I didn't play football, despite the size and girth that you're seeing right now up here. I played basketball. As a matter of fact, the first game that I was given to do for CBS, after studying and learning the game all summer long, they said, JB, just get up in the booth. Don't try to get fancy. Look at the TV monitor. We will always have the correct time, because if you look at the stadium clock, it could be wrong. Follow what's on the TV monitor, and don't get cute. Just call it clean. I go through the first half calling a football game. I'm thinking, football's not that difficult. Cockiness, the precipitous slide down the abyss if you get overconfident. Third quarter, I'm talking about, this was Tampa Bay. They were hosting the Atlanta Falcons. Steve DeBerg, he's up under center. He takes the handoff, delayed handoff. Tua takes the snap, delayed handoff to James Wilder, the running back. He's at the 40, he's at the 45, he's at the 50, he's at the 55. He's tackled at the 60-yard line. My producer gets in my ear, JB, there's no such thing as a 60-yard line in football. Go to the commercial. Now I'm all shook up. I looked at the stadium clock. I said, well, we're going to step aside and take a timeout with about 8 minutes and 99 seconds left in the third period of play. We'll be right back. Thank goodness my colleague who played ball at Harvard with me, he knew the game. He came back and said, for those of you who heard JB say 8 minutes and 99 seconds, he was just academically trying to see if you can make the conversion to realize he meant to say 9 minutes and 39 seconds left in the third period of play. God will block for us, and God does that. He's done it in the Bible. He came and blocked for Abraham, who despite his age, who had his name changed from Abram to Abraham, that he was going to be the father of many nations. Despite the deadness of Sarah's womb, God came down and blocked for Abraham, and the rest is history. He did the same for Moses, leading the Israelites out of captivity in Egypt. As they're heading towards the Red Sea, Pharaoh and the Egyptians are coming to recapture them. They think they're at a dead end. The Red Sea in front of them, mountains on either side, and the Egyptians coming from behind. It looked like a dead end, but a dead end to us is an opportunity for God. We know what happened. He parted the Red Sea, and they went across the Red Sea to safety. And of course, Pharaoh and the Egyptians are trying to come behind him, but the miracle that God has for you and us is for us. Nobody else can walk in your miracle. Pharaoh's army found that out, because when they tried to walk in his miracle, they were drowned. David, the young boy who had to wait, 17 years before he became king, he was the one who went in to take care of the giant, the Philistine, when all the adults were afraid of him because of his height. And I love the boldness that he had. Who is this uncircumcised Philistine that would dare defy the armies of the Lord? But God did the blocking. And if we do that, God will block for us. Now, I know I may not be able to, because we've got some very abundantly blessed people in the audience. But as I was thinking about this coming here, yes, I'm sharing a personal story of what Majors Paul and Dawn did for my brothers, so that at this point in time, I have eternal confidence and comfort knowing where they are, that they've joined that great cloud of witnesses who are cheering us on. But I can't come here. Whether I have the same sizable seed, it might be considered a widow's mite compared to some of you. But for Majors Paul and Dawn, I had to come down with a seed as well to make certain that there is conviction in terms of what we are doing for the least of these. In terms of what we see in society out here, Ms. Meredith and I were discussing that, where there's such a chasm in society, a wide chasm and a deep one, where people are spewing vitriol at each other, not talking with each other, they're talking at each other. They will more quickly identify with a political label as opposed to being a Christian. I am a Christian broadcaster. I am a Christian husband. I am a Christian contributor. I'm a Christian all the way around, and that is what we are supposed to be about. So let's make certain that if we do that, we cannot outgive God. And many of you who are where many of us would like to be, my fervent prayer is to be a significant contributor to the upbuilding of God's kingdom. Yes, not to feast on the lust of things for myself, but to make certain that we're making a difference in the game of life. So when I wrote my little check, my wife, who manages the money in the house, came and doubled it, Majors Paul and Don. So I might be going without lunch for a little while, but that is okay because of what it is. I pray fervently that you will see the need. And your boy isn't up here because I don't perspire, I sweat. But I'm doing that because of the love of the Lord and the love of seeing the least of these get the same opportunity. And the Salvation Army is not about giving handouts. They're all about giving a hand up to ensure that people can effect long-term stability and self-sufficiency. What can be better? I close on this note. My brother who died, the first one who died, some 12 or 15 years ago, Majors Paul and Don came up to Washington, D.C. to do the graveside service for my brother John. And then not long ago, came up to Maryland, where Major Paul gave a sermon, a eulogy like none other, to preach about my brother Everett, who said before he died, James, I've seen Jesus and I want to go home to him, that I'm free. And I thank those representatives from Salvation Army for ensuring that their mission was fulfilled in my brothers. So shame on me if I'm not going to go out and do the same to try to make certain that somebody else who may be in a difficult situation doesn't have the same opportunity to know what salvation is about. I thank you, I praise God for you, and I pray that you'll join the team. God bless you.